it's not really a
Yeah.
question. It's
Yeah.
something. It would be a topic more than a question.
Hmm.
But questions definitely arise from it. Um, Lately, for quite a while now, actually, I've been feeling like I'm kind of being carried along by Amida's ocean, Amida's river
Nice.
of the Dharma, Amida's
Hmm.
river of merit, of Amida's, you know,
Yeah.
transformative light, just carried along. And I look at things. We went today on we decided there's a lot for us to catch up on after a very busy few weeks, but we just decided we need a break. So we went to Saltram today, which is about, I don't know, about an hour away from where we are. And it's a National Trust uh,
Hmm.
manor. It's Saltram Manor. It's and gardens. It's maintained by the National Trust. Really beautiful place. More like, and there's a estuary and all these paths
Mm.
around the grounds, and it's just really
Hmm.
beautiful. So on the way there, or on the way back, actually, there was almost the perfect storm of a traffic situation on the sort of
Oh no.
major sort of motorway that we were on
Yeah.
coming back, and it made me reflect on quite a few times. I was just like, that could have been really bad. I mean, it was just the perfect
Mm.
storm for me not to be able to visually see what was happening, and then, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Hmm.
and and that's a quite concrete, physical thing that I just think to myself,
Mm.
yeah, and I reflect for over quite a long time. I've had those moments where I'm like, that could have been really bad. That really should have been really bad,
Hmm.
karmically speaking. Um,
Hmm.
and it doesn't turn out that way. Or I look back at it and I go, wow, that could have, I didn't think of it at the time. Something happened either
Mm.
with something at work or, with situation with people, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
either at the time or when I reflect on it later, I think, how? How did that go just horribly wrong? So that's a really quite
Yeah.
concrete way. And that's where I guess some of the questions arise as to just how much
Mm.
that 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 transference, that river of merit that's being that's being sent our way, freely without restriction. Um, when you hear you're hearing the name, and and you've encountered the Dharma, you've encountered the light, and that's happening. How much of
Hmm.
that influences, if you're in the karmic flow of the Buddha rather than just your own karmic flow,
Mm.
how much that impacts things? If you see what I mean, you're in the
Yeah.
karmic flow of the Tathagata. That's the one side of it, and the other side, I feel, as far as just the teachings and Dharma dialogue and all that,
Hmm.
trying to figure things out, so
Yeah.
relaxed now. I've talked about this before with you and in other videos that I
Yeah.
haven't posted yet. I've got quite a backlog again, going back months again, back to at least March,
Yeah.
and that I've posted about these topics, and just things that that are that I'm realizing without any
Uh-huh.
real effort, or realize that I have realized in the past. That's like, oh, that's why I am able to see this. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, I feel like I'm just being carried. I feel like I'm just
Hmm.
being carried along, you know, on the ship
Yeah. I
of
mean,
the Dharma
that's a
kind of
great
thing.
feeling,
I
right?
don't, yeah, and so I just, you know, I just wonder about all those things. How much of that karmic transference of merit from the Tathagata, from Amida, through his vow power,
Mm.
through his light, through his compassion, impacts just everyday things, how much it impacts your mind and your, you know, and I know that's an awful lot just from experience, but do you see what I'm saying? Just kind of how that works and to what extent
Yeah, I
we
I
can
think so.
safely
And
reflect on
yeah, I
that
have
without it becoming Hakurai.
it raises a lot of great you know, uh thoughts and ideas. And so I do have some, just initial thoughts I guess I could share with you.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
so yeah, one would be, um, of course, a Buddha cannot, um, or the Buddha does not alter our karma, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
your karma, the things that happen to you, the results of are the results of your own actions, right? The results of, and also the, in some mysterious way, I mean, it can be also the actions of others, although we want to be careful about the idea of collective karma, because that's sometimes used to, like, um, say that people are uh, collectively, we just want to be careful about that idea.
sure.
In general, one's own karma is one's own, right? The Buddha says there's
Mm,
a thing that
mm,
one owns when you pass on into your next life is your deeds, right? Your karma, your
yeah.
actions that you have done.
Thoughts,
Karma
words,
in
and
this case, of
deeds. Thoughts,
course,
words, and actions.
yeah,
But
the three different types
mind,
of
body,
karmic
speech. Yeah,
of action, right? Is thoughts, words, and actions, right? Um, but so the uh, consequent or the results of karma, the law of cause and effect is a law of a principle of the universe, right? A principle that's baked into, so to speak, the reality that we live in. And even the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni, when Devadatta tried to kill him, he pushed a big stone down off a cliff onto the Buddha, and the stone missed the Buddha, but it struck his toe, and injured
mm,
his toe. And the disciples, his followers, were surprised at that because something bad had happened to the Buddha. There was clearly an unwholesome consequence there. So they asked him, why is this occurring to you if you have, purified your field of karmic action, if you have, if you are free of the kleshas, of the defilements, and you are truly, as you claim to be, the Tathagata, you are pure in respect to all actions of body, speech, and mind. Clearly, why is bad things happening to you? This, because it missed you, which is great, but it grazed your toe, so something's going on. And the Buddha replied, well, in a previous existence, long, long, long ago, I took a life. And so this is the residual karmic consequence of that far past, action in my past existence, um, or something uh, to that effect. So, even the Buddha himself is not, exempt from the law of karmic retribution, of karmic cause and effect, right? Even though he is free and pure from the kleshas and so on, and does not commit any evil. So,
I suppose we could say
um,
in his Nirmanakaya form, not exempt.
yeah, well, right, and so Obviously there's two kinds of Dharma body, as the Nirvana Sutra says. Or two kinds of body with regard to the Tathagata. There is the physical body that is visible and perceived by us, and then there's the Dharma body, which is beyond our comprehension. So that's something similar to the Nirmanakaya. But I wanted to try to actually find, because I think if we read that part of the sutra, then some things will be somewhat clear.
Okay. Let me
See.
let me allow for
Yeah.
sharing. There we go.
And I hope I remembered it correctly. Um, let's see. So one of of course, um, why did this occur? Maybe this is the okay.
Unscripted, unrehearsed, teleprompter free. Here at the Content Channel.
Yeah. Now, so let me continue though, sharing some
Okay.
thoughts I have about
Okay.
um, so yeah, and like Shinron says, every consequence of our karma comes from some past, karma. So, we aren't, just because we realize Shinjin or, take refuge in Amida does not mean that the consequences of our karma in any way, are changed or, it's like Shinron says, because you may well have died in that car accident had that been the result of your,
Mm.
karmic action. And in that case, you'd be in the Pure Land right now. You wouldn't be talking to me, right? And that's why Shinron says, I don't place any importance in a person's final moments or how they died. Because people were concerned about that. People thought,
Mm.
this person died a horrible death. Does that mean he, was not a
Mm.
person who can be born in the Pure Land? And Shinron's reply was, no, I don't um, take any stock in how a person meets their end, because those who have attained faith, right, or shinji, true trusting, are all certain to be born in the Pure Land, no matter how their life plays out. So that I think is the sort of Shinshu perspective on that. So let me see here. We've
Well, it
got
wasn't just necessarily dying, that I was concerned. It was just
yeah.
it could have been bad, however it turned
Mm-hmm.
out. Not necessarily,
Well, and if your
in
karmic,
other situations,
yeah,
whatever it is with work or with people or with, do you know what I mean?
right,
Where, oh, that could have gone really wrong. Why didn't it? Kind of thing. Or do you see what I mean? Or it should have gone really wrong, but it didn't. Or, anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's because of karma and
Yeah.
it's out working, and so on. Not that that is a fatalistic point of view. So let's read this and let's just see what
Okay.
happens. So, can I share? I wonder.
Yes, I've made it so that I've made it so.
Okay, cool. See if this works. Start broadcast. Not very sure. Okay, I think this is gonna work. I haven't done this on my phone in quite a while.
Okay.
Um, it
There we
says
go.
that I am sharing my screen.
There we go. Yep. Now it is. Yep.
Okay, so 5, pierced by a rock. In the fifth inquiry called Pierced by a Rock, we hear about how being angry Devadatta threw a rock. In the past, it seems, the Buddha to be the Bodhisattva was the youngest brother of the children of one father. When the father passed away, Making a commotion on account of the servants, the brothers became opposed to each other. The Buddha to be, who was himself endowed with great strength, after overcoming his younger brother, threw a rock and killed him. Through that deed and its result, after undergoing suffering in the Naraka hell and so on for countless thousands of years, he became a Buddha in this, his last state of existence. Formerly, Devadatta, Prince Rahula's uncle, was a merchant together with the Buddha to be in the time of this Seri merchant story. Having reached the Patana village, they said, "You take one street and I will take one street." And they entered by two different ways. In the street by which Devadatta entered, there were two people, an elderly merchant's wife and her granddaughter. They had a large golden plate that had become stained, that was set aside inside an earthenware vessel, and not knowing it was a golden plate, she said, "Take this plate and give a trinket for my granddaughter." Having taken it and scratched it with a needle, he knew it was a golden plate. Thinking, "I will take it later," after giving her very little, he went away. Then, after seeing the Buddha to be approach her door, summoning and making him sit down and giving him the plate, she said, "Take this and give a trinket to my granddaughter from your basket." The Buddha to be, the Bodhisattva, after taking it and knowing it to be a golden plate, understood she is deceived about it, and from his purse he set aside 8 pennies and gave the rest of his goods, and also gave a trinket from his basket to the young girl as an ornament for her hands, and then he went away. The first merchant, having returned, asked her for the plate, but she said, "Son, I cannot give it. Having given this and that to my child, he took it and went away." Having heard that, like someone with a broken heart, he ran along after him. The Buddha to be had already got onto a boat. Saying, "Stop, don't go, don't go," he made a wish. "May I be able to destroy him in whatever state he rises." Because of that wish, they harassed one another in countless hundreds of thousands of lives. Arising in the Shakya family in this existence, the fortunate one by and by attained omniscience. While living near Rajagaha, Devadatta went forth in the presence of the fortunate one, together with Aniruddha and so on, and attained the absorptions. Being famous, he begged the fortunate one for a boon, saying, "Venerable sir, let the whole of the community of monks undertake the 13 austerities. Let the whole of my community of monks bear them." But the fortunate one didn't give permission. Devadatta was overcome with hatred and lost the absorptions, desiring to murder the fortunate one. One day, while the fortunate one was standing at the foot of Mount Devara, he threw a rock at him while standing on the top of the mountain. Through the power of the fortunate one, another mountain caught it as it fell, but a splinter broke off and struck him, giving a blow to the fortunate one's toes. Therefore, it is said, "In the distant past, I killed my half-brother for the sake of wealth. I threw him in an inaccessible mountain and crushed him with a rock. Through that deed and its result, Devadatta threw a rock at me, which crushed the big toe on my foot with a shard, which was made of stone." And this is from an English translation of a series of 10 stories from the Apadana text and commentary. So explaining the unwholesome actions the Bodhisattva made and the consequences when he had become the Buddha with an embedded reading text. So translated by Ananda Jyoti. So I think this is called Apadana, and is from the Pali Canon. So, and I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. This is from the sutta. So, essentially, he says, "So let me explain to you why, even the Buddha suffers. So in a previous life, I was a scoundrel known as Minaldi. I slandered the innocent, independent Buddha Sarabi. Through that deed and through its result, I long transmigrated through hell. For many thousands of years, I experienced unpleasant feeling. through the remainder of that deed here in my last existence, I received much slander myself at the hands of Sundarika. So basically, as I think as a teaching, I'll stop sharing. As a method of teaching, the Buddha is explaining how, because people, oh, okay, did it stop sharing? I wonder.
Yeah, it stopped sharing now. Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah,
So the
it did.
Buddha is
Definitely.
explaining,
Yeah.
because people slandered the Buddha, right?
Hmm.
People, attacked the Buddha. There was a time when, someone spit on the Buddha. He didn't Shakyamuni and what he was saying. The Buddha was not. In other words, the Buddha did not just get a free pass through life. You know, right? I mean, he
Exactly.
was he was one of us in that sense. He experienced all kinds of things, and so when he was, and his disciples would ask him, well, why do these things happen if you are the Tathagata? And so in response to that, those questions, he would say, well, in a previous life, I slandered a Buddha, and so that's why now that I am a Buddha, others slander me, and so forth. So he was using it as a teaching example that ultimately, if you think about it, brings the responsibility for one's own action on to oneself, right? Because how else might the Buddha have said? Well, you know, um, there's just a lot of bad people out there, and it's not my fault if they decide to slander me.
Right.
what if he had said that, right?
It's like,
Yeah, then he's
yeah,
not taking, he's telling his
responsibility. Yeah.
disciples, it's not your fault, or it's not fault is a bad word, but it's not, he instead is telling people, look within yourself and,
For the
you
source of
know,
your issues,
uh,
the source
or,
of your
and
problems.
see how, and that
Hmm.
was the way people in that time thought about
Hmm.
karma and so on. And the Buddha always, teaches in terms of the culture, and adapts to the ideas and so on of the people that he is teaching. So yeah, the real takeaway is, one's own, the things that happens to one are, ultimately the maturing of fruits of one's own actions and in
Mm.
karma. Not necessarily, you know, um, I mean, I think there's what's called, indeterminate karma. There's, different kinds of karma, right? So, and it's all
Hmm.
very complicated. And, at one
Yes, it
point,
is.
the Buddha said, to Ananda, he was explaining the law of cause and effect and karma. And Ananda, after the explanation, says, "Oh, well, that's so simple and easy to understand." And then the Buddha, like, corrects him and says, "No, it isn't. It's not. It's not simple
Yeah,
and easy to understand." Um, so we want to be
exactly.
cautious about getting too, wrapped up in speculation
Sure,
about, because we're
sure.
also told that only an enlightened one can truly understand all of the
E-
karmic
exactly,
um,
exactly. I was gonna,
effects
yeah,
and so on.
exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Can you hear me okay, by the way? I keep getting a message that my internet connection is unstable, but am I okay sound wise? And can you hear me?
Um,
Oh dear. Doesn't look like you can.
yeah, yeah,
You can,
you're
oh,
fine
you can.
now. It
Okay, good.
kind of, yeah,
I'm gonna go
it
off
dropped out a
camera.
little bit, but
Okay,
okay,
I'm gonna go off camera just to see if that helps a bit. So, can you hear me okay now?
sure.
Yeah. Okay. So,
I
um,
can, yes.
okay, perfect. So, yeah, I was thinking that's exactly what I was thinking. And I remember the
Mm,
occasion where it really hit home to me that teaching that, you know, really only we're at the 10-minute mark, so we should wrap this up. This is a good
mm.
setting the stage for my next question about this, actually, which I'll ask in the next session. Cliffhanger. Um, but what I'll say is really quickly is the
Mm,
way when I that really became real to me is in the same. This was years ago. I believe it was the same website that we used for the in one of the vegetarian discussions
mm,
we had about vegetarianism in Buddhism, and there
mm,
was a it was that same website, and there was and I read an article or a discussion about karma, and it broke down all of
mm.
the types of karma and the interconnections. And I was like, by the end of it, I was like, at first you're like, okay, yeah, this is really, and then and by the end, I was like, no, yeah, only a Buddha can unravel and understand or perceive or
Yeah.
conceive all of this. But anyway, so yeah, so this is a good, because yeah, the Buddhists would never can't
Right.
change your karma. They can't work
So
against
the
your karma.
answer,
So
yeah,
my next question is, how does the sort of in that inconceivable way, I know, but how does that merit transfer take place? To what extent? Because I'll tell you why I have that question in the next episode.
yeah.
This is the cliffhanger. We'll leave this cliffhanger, and we'll can we leave it here? Did
Mm.
you want to say anything else in this episode really quickly, or should we leave it for the next session?
Sounds
Let's
good.
leave. All right. So the big
All right.
question.
So
So yeah,
continuing
yeah
our,
discussion. So we were talking about
yeah.
kind of what in the limited way of how we can understand how karma works and how
Mm.
our karma is our
I
own.
think,
And there's collective
yeah.
karma. There's different kinds of karma and things, but you know, and we were talking about. I was talking about kind of the when you're thinking about the merit transference of Amida Buddha, the vow power, the light, the mind of the Buddha being given to us
Hmm.
through his compassion. Um, to what extent that impacts things in one's life when one has
Yeah.
encountered that?
Yeah. It's a great
Because
question.
there's discussion, and I'd like to share something really quick to give an example of what I'm talking about.
Sure.
We've discussed this before, actually, and I've discussed it in videos. Um, bear with
Hmm.
me a minute. So just share my screen. Yeah. So this is letter 20. Can you see that? And should I make it a bit bigger?
Yes. Yep.
There we go. How's that? That good?
Hmm.
So let me just move this out of the way. There we go. So um, this is letter 20 from Lamp for the Latter Ages.
Hmm.
And he's, Shinron Shonen is addressing some things. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to go to the part that I'm referring to here. And and he
Mm.
starts to say, and I'll just read through this. So in contrast, how lamentable. Oh, bear with me a sec. I need to turn on the power again. Sorry, I had to turn the power on. I forgot to turn the power switch on for my power lead for my computer.
No
You have
problem.
to do that here in the UK. They have each power outlet has a
Oh,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
A
has a
switch.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, yes, unscripted, unrehearsed, teleprompter free here at the Gankai channel, as we are wont to say at least once in an episode. Anyway, so in contrast, how lamentable that people who have not fully awakened from drunkenness are urged to more drunkenness, and those still in the grips of poison encouraged to take yet more poison. Very important passage here in many different ways, but it is indeed sorrowful to give
Hmm.
way to impulses with the excuse that one is by nature possessed of blind passions, excusing acts that should not be committed, words that should not be said, and thoughts that should not be harbored, and to say that one may follow one's desires in any way whatever. It is like offering more wine before the person has become sober, or urging him to take even more poison before the poison has abated. Here's some medicine, so drink all the poison you like. Words like this should never be said. Um, so yeah, I think this is where, yeah. So um, in people who have long heard the Buddha's name and said, this is the part I want to get to here. In people who have
Mm.
long heard the Buddha's name and said the Nembutsu, surely there are signs of rejecting the evil of this world and signs of their desire to cast off the evil in themselves. When people first begin to hear the Buddhist vow, they wonder, having become thoroughly aware of the karmic evil in their hearts and minds, how they will ever attain birth as they are. To such people, we teach that since we are possessed of blind passions, the Buddha receives us without judging whether our hearts are good or bad. When upon hearing this, a person's trust in the Buddha has grown deep, he or she comes to arbor or abhor, sorry. He,
Mm.
when upon hearing this, a person's trust in the Buddha has grown deep, he or she comes to abhor such a self and to lament continued existence in birth and death. And such a person then joyfully says the name of Amida Buddha, deeply entrusting himself to the vow. That people seek to stop doing wrong as the heart moves them, although earlier they gave thought to such things and committed them as their minds dictated, is surely a
Mm.
sign of having rejected this world. Moreover, since, what happened there? Sorry, I went too far. Moreover, since Shinjin that aspires for attainment of birth arises, oh, interesting how that's phrased. Moreover, since Shinjin that aspires for attainment of birth arises through the encouragement of Shakyamuni and Amida, once the true and real mind is made to arise in us, how can we remain as we were, possessed of blind passions? Let me just see.
Mm.
I think if we go further, so there are reports of uh, uh, wrongdoing even of some among you. I've heard of their slandering them out. Let me just no. So this is the part I want to look at. This bit
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm. Great.
To what extent? So my question is: there's obviously when we encounter, and there's other places in Shinron's writings where he
Yeah.
discusses this where when we encounter the Dharma, when we encounter the light, when
Yeah.
is working in us, we naturally we begin to see our own,
Mm.
spiritual evil, our evil on that spiritual way. We begin to see our own um, ignorance. We begin to see to whatever extents we can within our own,
Mm-hmm.
bamboo perceptions and karmic causes and
Mm-hmm.
conditions. But we begin to see this and we begin to naturally want to turn away from that way of behaving. So there's a transformative, what I'm saying here is there's this, when it comes to the wrong that we do, we naturally begin to actually see ourselves and see ourselves for what we are, and we want to naturally
Mm-hmm.
turn away from that and and seem to be enabled to do that by Amida, seem to be enabled, and that we naturally want to turn away is enabled by Amida to do so. And these are signs of, these are evidences of that working.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Talks about these
Mm-hmm.
signs of evidence. It's surely a sign of, you know, the
Yeah.
working, of Amida. So so there's a transformation there of our mind, heart mind, in some way,
Hmm.
inconceivably, that we now not only see it, but we want to turn away from our, you know, the way our samsaric way of doing things. Do you know what I mean? We
Hmm.
want to um we naturally now want to do that and do that, to whatever extent we can. We're still
Yeah.
Bombo, we're still, but do you see what I'm saying? So there's transformation here of some
Yeah. Yeah.
extent through the working of Amida, through Amida's merit transference, through Amida's mind being given, through all of that, through his compassion. So that's what my
Hmm.
question is. So it's there seems to be a transformation with when it comes to heart, mind, and wanting to turn away from evil. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
why not
I think
other
so totally.
aspects of life? And do you see what
Yeah.
I mean?
Well,
So
there's in the chapter on I think it's called the Benevolent Kings Sutra or something like that. Um, Amida Buddha appears and teaches, it's the chapter on longevity. So if people recite the Nimbutsu or practice the Nimbutsu rather, um, they'll have long lives and they won't have any,
mm,
inauspicious
mm,
deaths
mm,
and
okay,
so on and so forth. All of these,
boom, yep,
all of these this worldly kind of benefits, right? Um, but you know, just obviously just because someone practices the Nimbutsu doesn't necessarily mean they're not gonna, you know,
yeah,
they're gonna live long, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah,
not meet,
exactly, yeah, yeah.
an
And it,
unfortunate
and aren't
end and
there
so on.
in is was were you referring to something in Tana Show there? Weren't there? Isn't there things in Tana Show where there's something along those lines where you know
Yeah.
you if you
um,
do such and such you have a bigger Buddha body, or do you
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
that's
There's
sort of related, I suppose.
anyway,
But
but yeah, sorry,
yeah,
yeah,
so, but that is, sort of regarded to be a provisional kind of teaching. The true,
yeah,
that leads people to recite the Nimbutsu in self-power,
mm,
sort of,
mm,
benefits and so on. But it's the true realization, is the experience of Shinji and the attainment of, you know, birth in the Pure Land, right? When the entering into, Sokutoku Ojo Jufu Taiten, immediately attaining birth and dwelling in the stage of non-retrogression. In this life, that's the true realization. And that, it's sometimes termed Anji, right? The mind that is at peace, the mind that is peace of mind, you know.
hmm
Um,
hmm
true
and
followers
there's
of the
the 10
Nimbutsu.
benefits in this life. All
Yeah,
the
yeah,
there's the 10
exactly.
benefits in this life that are pretty
Right.
major, benefits. And anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And those all come from dwelling in that state, Titan. It's dwelling in that state of wonder and of having the peace of mind. Those are the benefits of Shinji, right?
Yes, yes.
So a person of Shinji experiences those benefits. And what do those benefits all point to? Well, they all point to um, I don't worry about my karma. I don't worry about what's going to happen
Mm,
to me because I'm already in the embrace of infinite light,
mm,
just as I am. I'm already dwelling in the stage of non-retrogression. I've
yeah.
arrived. I'm here. There's nowhere.
It's settled.
There's nothing else. It's all,
It's
yeah,
settled.
and it's all just
It's settled.
perfect in Amida's Pew Land. Nothing is not perfect. So, and I am, uh, you know, as Shinran says, the person of true and real Shinjin, their mind and heart always and already dwells in the Pure Land, lives in
Boom.
the Pure Land, abides in the Pure Land. So it's a total, and that's what we mean by, a total transformative experience.
Mm.
Suddenly, and, imagine how powerful that could be. Let's say someone is super depressed and they're thinking about, throwing it all away. And then they hear this teaching and they come to realize that, like Shinran says, this is all for me alone. They realize that their life has infinite value, is you know perfect and just
Mm.
the way it
Mm.
is, and they realize joy and they decide, I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna live and enjoy living in the stage of no turning back enlightenment. So yeah, you're right. It has powerful effects in practical life, in our very existence. It's not merely theoretical, right? It's not merely um, uh, wishful thinking or an ideal or something like that. It actually does, you know. It's not to say we don't struggle and have, I mean, I've got all kinds of things going on, you know,
Yeah, you mentioned some of those
frustrations and
last time. Yeah.
all this stuff. But there's that baseline reality of
Hmm.
living in Amida's vow is there all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it's always something you can fall back on. And, and that's why if you ask people, what is the goal? You'll get all kinds of different answers. So let me ask you, just for fun, since we're having this conversation, what is, what is the goal or what is the realization in Alien Buddhism, in,
To
Jodo Shinshu for you?
to become a Buddha through Mita Buddha's vow power, and then return as a Bodhisattva Buddha in multiple Nirmanakaya forms to help all beings.
Yeah, and that's a great answer. But the immediate, in terms of realization, you know, um, what do we, because everything you said is, of course, perfectly correct, but that is all a result
Mhm.
of and that's when we talk about Inso Eiko. We'll discuss that probably in the Shakti Brothers episode, but you know, that is all a necessary result of attaining Shinju, right?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
attaining,
Or
of entering
being
into,
attained to Shinjin, being
yeah,
attained.
yeah, of
But
yeah, yeah.
I should have
So,
said realize Buddha nature rather than to realize Buddha nature
mm,
and then
yeah.
return. But yeah, return to
Well, yeah. I mean, there's
through
all
Amida
kinds of
Buddha's
ways you
power.
could
Yeah.
answer that
Uh,
question, and they're
anyway,
not. None of them are
but it's
wrong,
the
right?
but
It's
it's the but it's so in Shinjin it's already realized.
yeah, yeah. And that's the real. I
Maybe not
think the
experienced
real.
in the way that a Buddha would experience it,
Yeah,
but
yeah. But it's all there. It's all gonna happen. It's all held within, and that's why we say, you know, in Jodo Shinshu, the real object of this path is to attain peace of mind, you know, in this life, here and now, not just on our deathbed, not
hmm
just,
hmm
um, not, but right here, right now, entering into and dwelling in this world that is fulfilled by the vow. And of course, that's transformed. I mean, how could it not? And kudoku, virtues, so or merit, virtue, merit. These you have to remember. There's a difference between the merit that we create or have as full human beings, and the merit of the Tathagata is um, of a different kind. It's not a difference in degree, it's a difference in kind. Um, because Shinran talks about the virtues, that the true and real virtues of the Tathagata are created through the pure mind, right? Which we lack.
Hmm.
So we can those true and real virtues, and they're essentially, it's the virtue of truth and true reality as it is, of shinjitsu, truth and reality. The true, that which is true and real, is somehow breaking into our reality, and that's the meaning of virtue or merit in the sense of when it is applying to Tathagata. So um, it's not that we are making a bunch of bad merits and the Tathagata gives us a bunch of good merits, right? To counteract our bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not what's going
Right.
on.
Gotcha.
Rather, all of our uh, actions and so-called merit and virtue, which is based on inverted thinking, is all
Being
turned to
trans
zero by uh, encountering.
well, in fact, being
Is how I would.
transformed into the highest good. All our
Yes,
past,
yes,
present, and future
exactly.
karma transformed into the highest good. So that's another. There was another, you know, thing about this
Yep.
question, that I had is, I suppose I don't want to limit it. Like we talked about before, not limiting Amida Buddha's
Mm.
power in any way. So that's part of this question, I think, is in a way, you know, is there any limit in that, even in that sense, that there might be some in that
No.
transforming of one's past, present, and future karma into the highest good. That sounds like something's changed to me. There's something's changing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, and I don't know. I guess that was kind of where my question's coming from as well. Is not wanting to limit the power. Not in some conceptual way, not wanting to limit another way of,
Yeah.
yeah, not wanting
Yeah.
to limit the
So it's
power of the Tathagata's
you,
vow.
you just want to, I think, you know, um,
But it's a question, so obviously, there's
yeah.
it's not settled yet. Things are not settled yet. Let's just say that. But you know, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Anyway,
it's something that honestly you don't even think about once you
yeah.
are in like
I
true
there's somebody else.
practitioners. I think.
I've heard others say that actually. Other people that in
Yeah.
whom Shinjin has settled, have said, you just get to a point where it's not even to get to a point, but once that happens,
Yeah.
you just don't even think about it. You don't worry about it. You don't. I've
Yeah.
been told that and read or heard other people saying, similar such
Hmm.
things.
Yep. And I would say that's exactly right. As you're um not waiting for something, right?
Yeah,
Anymore.
yeah,
You're not
exactly.
sort of, you know, uh
The process is
all
happening,
all
and
of
I'm going
your
with it. I'm go.
all
I'm
of your
trusting the process.
expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
you're living in that you know, true world that is truth and reality, and there's no like, you can't really like improve on it, you know. How do you improve on the highest and best thing there is?
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
It's like the same
Yeah.
thing when, you know, when I've the sort of thought occurred to me in my reflections.
I guess so,
You know,
right?
I had this question of why with Pure Land, the whole with, with the broadness of,
Mm-hmm.
Pure Land schools or Pure Land gates, and, why, at one point, this is years ago,
Mm.
why is it ended up in Japan through, with, with, through the Dharma masters to Honen to Shinran to Ren, through, what, why is it,
Well, that's
why,
an easy answer.
and it, and I just,
History.
history, yeah, but but it's not just, I didn't, yeah, just, yeah, the history, the location, but I
Yeah.
mean, um, why isn't it further developed is what I was saying. Why does it kind of come to a pinnacle? And I almost as soon as I asked it, I just, you can't refine it any any clearer. You can't. Do you see what I mean? Like when I finally asked the question, um, and it was just to myself. This one I didn't ask
Mm.
someone. I've discussed it with you
Mm-hmm.
later. I've discussed it with
Yeah.
people later, but as soon as I kind of asked that question in my reflection to myself, well, not as
Yeah.
soon as, because I had had the question for a while, but at some point when I was reflecting on it, it just, you know, Amida's
Yeah.
light did its thing, because it just, you can't refine it any further. You can't. There's no. It can't be refined further. It can't be. How could it be? Do you see what I mean?
Well, yeah, like it's like Renew says, all of the different schools are all, you know, in some way descended from, the teaching of Shakyamuni. That's why we don't, you know, uh, criticize, other schools and so on. Um,
In fact,
but yeah, I
we're
mean,
directed to not do so
the
by starting with
answer,
Honan. Well, at least
yeah,
with
and
Honan.
the
At
answer,
least with Honan. Starting with Honan. But anyway.
yeah, well, starting
Sorry.
with Nagarjuna, actually,
Yeah,
he
true.
said, whoever out of attachment to the Dharma, the religion that he follows, criticizes the religion of another will go to, the deepest purgatory. So it's one of the oldest cautions in the book, James.
Yeah.
But
So
anyway, so
all
I
the
was
Dharma
going to
masters,
say,
we can say. All the Dharma
yeah,
masters, But
yeah.
anyway.
And what was I going to say? It was on that note, which was, yeah, I mean, the question, and it's a great question. It's like how did, you know, Jodo Shinshu as Shinron Shomi, taught it and conceived of it, and wrote it down, Jodo Shinshu, how did that, come to be? And the answer is, uh, multifaceted because it contains history, it contains the
Karmic causes and
way
conditions.
the
Yeah.
transmission of texts. It contains the way, interpretations, commentary, old traditions on the sutras, and then the ways in which those commentaries themselves were transmitted, interpreted, and it contains social aspects of, you know, Heian period Japan and how that influenced, and it has, it's a great question, but when you ask it, I mean, you realize there's there's so many inconceivable ways in which, you got from A to B, and of course, I mean, if you're interested in that, there's history, not so much, unfortunately, in English, but there is some, you have to look into like the history of Shinshu, and I took a class in the history of Buddhism, history of Dodo Shinshu, Chuabuki Gakuin, which is a good overview, but that's all in Japanese, of course. But yeah, it is fascinating how one book. Well, I'll send you the pamphlet
Okay.
actually,
Maybe we
and
could do a
it's
discussion on this
yeah,
along the
yeah.
way.
It sort of
Anyway,
talks about, it's more of like the history of the idea, but discusses kind of the how the idea of nimbutsu, you know,
mm,
evolved, and what its origins in early
mm,
Buddhism may have been, and so on and so forth. And that's a really interesting pamphlet. It's
mhm.
actually by Reverend Yosetsu Fujihara.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh,
he
excellent.
wrote,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll send you. The only thing
Yeah,
is, it's a
we
little
could do
hard to
we could
read.
do a
It's not a very good PDF.
okay. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how we get on. Maybe we could do a session on that or two. But so anyway, to sum up, because we kind of reached the point,
Yes.
to sum up. No, it's too much. No, wait. Let me explain. No, it's too much. Let me sum up.
A lot
So
of
to
great
sum
things to
up,
think about.
yeah. Um, so yeah, it sounds like once it's settled. You don't have to, once there comes a point where you don't worry about such things, basically. It's not a
Yeah, you don't. Of course, what happens, and your and all of that. It's all um, just, you don't worry about it because you're living in the light.
hmm,
So it's all good, as we
yeah,
say here in
yeah,
California.
exactly.
It's all the highest good. We can say.
Yeah.